Hi, and welcome to The Install. We're Paloma Contreras and Caroline Jadier, and this is where we talk about design, business, and the real life behind creative work. What's inspiring us, what's challenging us, and everything in between. Hello, how are you, Caroline?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you, Paloma?
I'm doing well. So excited to chat with you today.
I know it feels good. It feels good. It's always great. I look forward to it. Um,
Definitely.
it's definitely the most fun. This part of it is the most
Hmm.
fun work that I do during the
Yes,
week.
me too. I would definitely agree. It's fun to just connect and see what's going on in each other's worlds and in the design world at large.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Tell me about your week. What was your high and low?
Uh, it's been good. I would say my high, so it's currently Texas Design Week in Houston.
Oh, yeah.
So a couple of friends have been in town because they've got book signings and things. So I was able to see my dear friend Young Ha on Monday, and we had lunch together, which was really nice. And Peter Dunham came by the studio yesterday and showed
Oh,
us some
yeah.
of his new things, which were really beautiful and exciting. And he's always so fun to chat with because he
He's
has that
delightful.
classic
Yeah.
British humor, and it just doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
No,
about you?
totally
No
agree.
low for me this week so far, thankfully. What about you?
That's great. Okay. High and low are just like life. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is just how it goes. And pride goes before a fall. Just when you think, like, boop, boop, everything's going so great, something happens, sideswipes you, and you're like,
Yeah.
so I had this past weekend lose Starlight Ball. And my daughter is a sophomore in high school. And way back when, long before I moved to Birmingham, and I'm from Florence, North Alabama. I'm not from Mountain Brook or Birmingham. And so didn't go to high school here, but they used to have high school sororities. And we can put a pin in that. There are
Oh, wow.
pros and cons, but in any event, the cons kind of overtook the pros here in
Mhm.
town in that people were excluded, and that's very hurtful at a tender age. And so the moms got involved and coerced the girls and said, "We've got to get rid of these things. But if you will give up these sororities, we will throw you a big dance every year. We won't do it every year of high school, all 4 years. And now high school building is only 3 years, but we will alternate. We'll do one your sophomore year and then one again your senior year. So you can have your big lead out and everything. But we're going to include everybody in the whole
Mm,
town. So if your address is within the city limits of the city of Birmingham and you're 16 years old, you are invited to join and you can participate. We're not excluding anybody, which I really love. I think
that's
that's really
nice.
nice.
Yeah,
And we
that's
can all get
wonderful.
together. We'll have a lead out, we'll do a ball. And as with most things in this town and maybe others, they start to slowly aggrandize. Let's
Mm,
just say they start getting bigger. I've never been to one of these. I only see the pictures on social media. I've never been on the inside. I didn't really appreciate what went into it when I got a call this past fall from the chairs who said, "Hey, will you be on the decorations committee?" And I was like, "Oh, great. Thank you so much for including me. I would love to. Anything, that I'm invited to do for my daughter, as you know, I'm just delighted.
of
Thank
course.
to participate and be a part of it. And so, because I stay busy, you stay busy, I might miss it if you
Mhm.
didn't call and invite me to participate. And after the first meeting, it was like, wait a second. This is like throwing a huge wedding reception,
Oh,
but
goodness.
on no budget, like no budget. And everybody in town is going to come and judge your work on this tiny little budget. I literally had no idea. So I have been fretting about this thing for 6 months.
Mhm.
And, Lou will come in and be like, "How's this Starlight Ball going?" I'm like, "Please don't even mention it." Like my chest starts to tighten so tight, I can barely breathe when I start thinking about all the things that could go wrong. But last year they did beautiful flowers. It was just so gorgeous. I was like, how do you even compete? And not that I want to compete, but I don't want to, I want the girls to not be disappointed
Right,
when
of
they walk
course.
in, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, I leaned into the theme, the starlight ball. Let's go with stars. Let's do twinkle lights. One thing I know about high school girls is they love them some fairy lights,
Mhm.
like they all at Lou's camp, they all like to hang those lights over their bunk and all that kind of stuff. And it was a tremendous success. I had two co-chairs, one who does flowers for events, one who works for Suzanne Kassler and is just like supremely talented in execution and great taste. Three of us working together, very hard, long hours, got it all done. It looked great. It looked like a
Aw,
professional production. Two rave reviews, feeling great. A
good.
lot of attaboys, like whoop, whoop.
Eh,
Life is great. Coasting into Tuesday morning. Feeling like so confident and capable. Coasting into Tuesday morning, as you know, and for all the listeners, Paloma and I are producing this podcast ourselves.
yes.
There is
Yeah, we don't have a
nobody.
producer, we don't have a budget, we don't have any outside help. We are doing this on top of running our design businesses and our managing our families and everything else.
That's right. And some may say I'm a little long in the tooth to be learning some new technology, but I'm in here with my sleeves rolled up trying to figure
Mhm.
it out. And we had, when we filmed Steele's episode, we heard an echo, but it kind of went away. And I, I wasn't clued in that the echo was continuing. And when we looked at the recording afterwards, there was a tremendous echo,
Right.
and you don't want to ask anybody to re-record. You can't really recapture the magic of a episode as it's unfolding. And so I spent all of jury duty going in and meticulously hand editing the thing to salvage.
Which is so impressive, by the way, because we're on this platform called Riverside, and it's seamless in many ways, but there is a very steep learning curve. And I personally have tried to go in and look at the recordings and figure that out, and I haven't been able to. So kudos to Caroline for doing our editing and tackling all of that. So, yes,
I
we can learn new
probably
tricks.
yes, and I probably spent 8 hours editing that thing,
Mhm.
and I thought I had it. I was feeling so good about that as well, but when I went in to do some other things associated with it, some auxiliary pieces that I felt like had to derive from that because all the other audio was bad, I unintentionally undid everything that I had spent hours doing.
Mm,
And I was unaware when I uploaded it. And it's one of those things, it's never, here's the lesson, it's never the thing that I was anxious about,
right.
right? Like
Mhm.
the ball over the weekend is what I'm losing sleep over. Whereas I'm like blissfully gleeful about this episode that I've totally nailed, which has fallen apart without me even knowing it. So I just kind of take from that, like, don't worry.
Mhm.
Okay, because you're not worrying about the right thing
That's such a good
ever.
lesson. It's true, it's true. Life has other plans. You plan, you worry, you fret, and life is gonna throw you a
And
curveball.
you're looking over here, and the
Mhm.
thing that is gonna knock you down is coming right up behind you, and it's
Right.
going to, like, hit you in the back of the head, and you're like, "What?" Yep, always, always, always. So I try to tell myself when I'm worried about things to just let it go, let it go. This
Mhm.
is not the thing that's actually gonna fall apart. It's gonna be
Yes.
something else.
Yes.
Anyway, but, no worse for the wear. We're learning.
Mhm.
Please, give us, just a little bit of grace. 6 months from now, if we're still making those mistakes, I hear you, but we're on a little bit of a learning curve. We'll get there. We're doing so much better. From where we
Yes.
started, we've really come such a long way, so we'll get there.
Definitely. I agree, and, as you said, a little bit of grace goes a long way. We're doing our best, we're figuring it out, and now that's behind us, and hopefully, moving forward, it'll be smooth sailing, but,
Mhm.
we're so supportive. So many people have sent in really nice comments. We've gotten so
Oh
much great
gosh, yeah.
feedback about the podcast. Sounds like people are enjoying it. Please, we love to hear from you. Let us know, you have questions, if there's something you want us to talk about. Any kind of feedback is always welcome. But also, as we are a fledgling podcast, it always helps us to gain traction if you download the episode rather than just listening to it. That really
Mm,
helps. So, downloading the
Paloma, I
episode.
didn't even know that.
Yeah, I heard that
Okay.
on a Bravo podcast that I listen to that's been around for a
Okay.
long time, and they mentioned it the other day, and it's a popular
Download it.
podcast, but they were like, "Please, make sure you download. That helps us with our standing." So download the episodes, rate. That takes a second to give us a review, like just the stars, and then
Guys, we
leave a
really need
review.
you to rate it at a minimum. If you like it, if you
Yeah,
don't
if you
like
like it.
it,
If you don't like
you
it,
can
move
just
on.
like keep that to
Yeah,
yourself.
exactly. So we're going to encourage positivity in the world, help us spread it. We are open to receiving, and we
Here's
will put
what
it back
do.
out.
If you don't like it, just turn it off and don't listen.
Exactly.
That is the harshest punishment for sure.
Exactly. I agree. Well, in other news, it was recently announced that Tillet Textiles, which is this small textile house that's had been around for a long time, has been acquired and revamped by Schumacher, shall we say. So they've now sort of absorbed the company and
Yeah.
they're breathing new life into it, which is so wonderful.
Yeah. I have used Tillit from the jump.
Hmm.
I've always loved, um, I love designing things myself, and it was always so easy to choose your color, choose your
Hmm.
pattern, choose your background, choose your ground. And the the designs are so iconic, like, the greats have always used
Yeah.
them, and particularly Sister Parish for
Hmm.
Jackie Kennedy, and then Bunny Mellon
Hmm.
had several that she loved, and Patrick, who was a family member, one of the owners, was kinda out there doing it all himself, and there were moments when they were more responsive than others,
Hmm.
and there was a moment when I thought it had gone away, but then came back and they were doing more, but it's really wonderful. And that's one of the services that I think Krabbit provides as well, is Scott goes in and when a iconic fabric house is about to fold or has folded, he buys their
Hmm.
inventory. So we as the design community don't lose those designs and patterns
Right.
and often revives them. And Schumacher is, so great at execution,
Mhm.
and delivery. So that's wonderful to have them. Do you know, will there still be the same level of customization?
That I don't know. I do know offhand that Schumacher does offer a ton of customization. Like if you wanted to do something completely custom with them, they would do it. So I'm sure that if you approach them, they would be able to do some sort of customization. But I think you sort of touched on a much broader sort of topic in the industry that I think is so important. So much artistry, artisanship, craftsmanship is kind of going by the wayside as
Mhm.
time goes by. And it's wonderful when a big company like Schumacher can come in and revitalize and provide, a new chapter for a company like Tillet. We also saw recently, last year, I think, David Netto bought, was it Woodard Weave,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
the carpet company that
Yeah.
may have, in other circumstances, gone under. And you hate to see, these locally owned individual makers of whatever their particular product might be go away, because
Right.
it is a tough environment right now. This is a tough climate for anybody to do business in, regardless of,
Right.
what kind of business you own. And especially, I think for the design industry, I don't know. People talk about it, I think offline. I don't know how openly people are talking about it in forums like this, but it hasn't been like the most amazing time for many
Mm-mm.
businesses.
No.
It's certainly been challenging and we are seen as a luxury and it's not always an easy time in which to be fluff. And even if your clientele is super affluent and not as impacted by socioeconomic changes in the world at large, there's still the matter of optics. People don't always want to be seen to be spending money or they want to hold off until times are better. And so it's challenging. And then of course that, impacts makers as well. So whether it's that or individual workrooms, you think about crafts, like even just installing wallpaper. Like my wallpaper installers are starting to age out and it's like who's going to come after them? Peter Dunham was here yesterday, I mentioned earlier, and he was showing us all these amazing things. And he's so creative and clever and works with artisans in India and now Peru. He was showing us these beautiful alpaca blankets that he utilizes as blankets, obviously, but also used them to make curtains out of. He
Mhm.
used it as upholstery on sofas, like did all these things. And then he was talking about some of his workrooms in LA and he's like, who knows how long we'll be able to do that or something that's made in Asia. I don't know if we're going to be able to continue doing that because people are aging out and the craft, it's not continuing in the younger generations. We
It's
are across the street from a high school here in Houston. My office is right next to Lamar High School, basically. And those kids, they park on our street, they're up and down all day long. And I'm always thinking to myself, it would be so wonderful. I mean, hopefully this exists, but someone should, maybe not me, because we've got enough irons in fire, but someone should start some sort of like artisan craft guild to teach kids a trade because not every kid can or wants to go to
right.
college. And I mean, with the dawn of AI, that landscape is changing too. So teach these kids a craft so that they can earn a good living and have, a trade. And then we can continue making things in the US or
Yeah, when
anywhere.
I was in high school, we had trade school,
Mhm.
and at lunchtime, more than half of my high school left and worked in trades,
Wow.
and we had a shop.
Mhm.
And but most people, like, back in Greece, they were in high school when allegedly, when they were working on Danny's car.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
I'm thinking Grease the country, not yes,
No, no,
Grease the
no.
movie.
In
Yes, yes,
Greece,
yeah.
the movie, there used to be so much more of that,
Right.
and an electrician's shop and all of that kind of stuff. That wasn't used as much, but most people left and
Mhm.
either worked for hairdressers or what have you, or an electrician or a plumber or
Mhm.
whatever, because it was primarily a blue collar community, and
Mhm.
most everybody knew that their high school education wasn't going to train them for the job that they were going to need coming straight out of high
Sure.
school, right? And now college has gotten so expensive and it's a different animal. There's not as much emphasis on a liberal arts education
Mhm.
anymore. Everything is so STEM or oriented, but now all of those STEM jobs are being taken by AI.
Right.
It's a brave new world out here
Mhm.
for sure. It's hard to parent a child through all of this. I have one who is more skills oriented and but has joined an electricians union and
Mhm.
is doing that, which I would have said I would wanted him to focus more on liberal arts, but I don't know if that's not a better thing to be doing. But anyway, any event, I digress. I do think our economy is changing and it's hard for the younger generation to see the value in the work of an older business. I feel like
Mhm.
everybody is all into social media and like, posting their kitchen organization
Yeah.
or whatever it is rather than getting up and going to the factory and screen printing these fabrics.
Mhm.
But every artisan, I mean, like every trade person that I work with is in their 80s,
Yeah.
just about.
Yeah. No, I mean,
And
they're all
a
aging
few
out.
of them have younger guys
Mhm.
coming up behind them. And I think this is such a lucrative business. But it's work. I
Yeah.
feel like everybody's kind of looking for
It's not
what can,
sexy,
yeah,
it's not
what
being
can
an
I do?
influencer.
Yeah, what can I do that's just like an easy coast to ball in?
Mm.
And, I think people think that about our jobs that
Yeah.
they're super easy and it is a grind most days.
Yeah.
They're fun parts of it. You have to love it and you have to love hanging wallpaper too and get
Right.
satisfaction from that perfect scene.
Mhm. That's right.
But anyway, okay. So I had a question for you. Do you use lotion?
I do. I use lotion every day.
Uh-huh.
I shower every day and I always use body lotion after.
Uh-huh.
Currently, I'm using Necessaire, their body lotion. I really like it because it has peptides and
Yeah.
vitamins and different things in
Hmm.
it. So I use they have different scents. I like the Santal one. It
Mhm,
smells really nice. It absorbs quickly. I don't like anything that feels tacky or sticky for too long. So
mhm.
it's light, non greasy. And they also make no, sorry, body retinol that I will
Yeah.
sometimes mix in with the body cream, and I use
Mhm.
that, but that's always been ingrained in me. I don't know if it's, like, a Hispanic thing, but, like, I've
Mm-mm.
slathered Margot in Mistela body
Yeah,
lotion
me
after
too.
every bath since she was a teeny tiny baby. I love it. I
Yeah,
mean, your skin needs it. You if you don't moisturize, I feel like your skin feels tight and thirsty.
yeah.
What about
Well,
you?
and particularly as you get older too. Yeah,
Mhm.
I was gonna mention I've, been using this OS1 or OS2, I don't know, One Skin.
Mhm.
And it's got the peptide, like, for old skin to keep your skin from starting to get crepey or
Yeah.
losing its turgidity,
Mhm.
its pushback and all of that. And let me tell you something, it starts happening, and when it does, it's a precipitous decline,
Mhm.
but it's really great, and I'm using a Prequel glycolic milk before that.
On your
I put
entire body?
on my entire body. It's like a glycolic peel for your face, so in the shower, you really have to get in there and use
Okay.
your loofah or your scrub or whatever to just your whole body. Instead of doing, like, skin brushing like I
Mhm.
used to, now I'm using that loofah in the shower to just kind of do basically the same thing, but I use that glycolic body milk. And then I mix that One Skin stuff in with whatever I'm using. Have you used that brand OC or Osea?
I haven't, but I've seen it. I know what you're talking about, and I also don't know how to pronounce it.
I mean, if somebody knows, please
Yeah.
let me. I always stumble over it because I'd like to hear somebody with authority say it
Mhm.
out loud and boldly. I love the way it smells, and
Mm.
the products are really luxurious, but sometimes and it gives you a nice little glow, particularly,
Mhm.
like, if your shoulders are gonna be bare or whatever, but if I'm throwing on, like a long sleeve turtleneck or something, that's not what I want, so I have, again, back to Eucerin.
Mhm.
I have that use the super, super extra dry skin one of those, but I never take a shower, even if I do 2 a day. I'm not doing the glycolic, but I'm slathering up with the lotion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I did the same with both of my babies, and Luz uses lotion now, but there's not a chance in hell that my son does.
I think that's men in general too. It's not that hard. But maybe that's also why women we were having a conversation, a rep came in and was doing a presentation, and she said she'd recently gone to her high school reunion, and she's like, "All the women look amazing, but the men looked awful."
Listen,
But I think
as
it's just as women, we take better care of ourselves, and men don't feel like
100%.
they don't even worry about it. They're just like, "Whatever."
Okay, 10 years ago, sister and I had my sister is a year one of my sisters is a year Tay is a year ahead of me, and her name is Samantha, we call her Tay, and we had a close friend who died of a heart attack,
Aw.
sadly and suddenly, and just very traumatic, traumatized everybody. He was such a great guy, and, her class all got together for people came in quickly for the funeral or what have you, but then they set a weekend and they all got back together to just kind of process this very traumatic early passing.
Mm,
And they took a picture. And when she got back, she showed me the picture and I was like, okay, every one of the girls, you don't have to tell me. I know
yeah.
everybody, but I don't know who these men are. They all had lost all of their hair and had their faces had aged and they already had, kind of the dad bod,
Yeah.
if not more. And it was like nobody cared what they look like
Mm-mm.
except for the women. And they all looked exactly, I mean, looked older,
Sure.
but they all looked very attractive
Mhm.
and were in there doing the work on a
Right.
daily basis, trying to keep it all together. But these guys, it's
Yeah.
tough. It's tough to be a guy. I think
Yeah.
at some point, I think if I lost all my hair, though, let me just say this. If there was a point at which I didn't have any hair on the top of my head, I would give up too. I think I would be like, all right, guys, I'm out. I'm out.
That's
I've done
hilarious.
all I can do. And we're just going to coast on in like this
Mhm.
and just not even look in the mirror.
Too funny. Yeah, but I mean, it's just a fundamental difference, I think, between
Yeah. Yeah,
men and women.
for sure. For sure. And one other quick question. How often do you do Botox?
About every 3 months, 4 months, depending. Like, sometimes it wears off quickly in my forehead. Like, right
Yeah.
now, it's still pretty good. I got it done, I think, at the beginning of March, so it's fairly fresh, but it wears off more quickly than I wish it would. What about you?
Yeah. Well, I'm somewhere in between that 3 and 4 months. If you go 4 months, you can eliminate one. So if you can go those extra 4 weeks. And I
Mm.
ask myself, is it psychological or is it physiological that I
Mhm.
feel like I need it? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I think I need to take pictures of myself like one a month at the same day of the
Mhm.
month and mark on the calendar what day I got my Botox and actually see what's going on. I'd
Yeah.
really like to know because sometimes I feel like I can get too much Botox in my face, even though I try to keep it light. You know what I'm saying? I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't do fillers.
Yeah.
The only I did a little bit of Sculptra or whatever right
Mhm.
here just to fill my temples in, which you have to do as you get older, just a little bit of that. That's something new. That's a recent thing. But outside of that, I tried fillers way long time ago and didn't like any of them.
Yeah, I did that one time, a few years ago, a handful of years ago, in my under eyes because I
Yeah.
have dark circles, and I hated it.
Yeah, me too.
I could feel it in my face, you
Mhm.
know? It had like a it felt crunchy to me, and then, of course, all that research came out that it migrates and it never
Yeah.
fully dissolved, so I never
Well,
got that again.
sure. No tea, no shade, no pink lemonade. If it works for you, I'm
Yeah,
not out here
exactly.
telling you you shouldn't. I just tried it and felt the same way. I felt like I was puffy right here, like
Mhm.
in this weird area that I've never been, and I felt like it changed the way my face looked.
Hmm.
I should say I do get a little bit of filler right on the very edge of my lips just to
Oh,
keep
what does
them
that do?
from bleeding.
Okay.
It keeps the lines from going. I don't notice any difference in the fullness of my
Mhm.
lips from doing that. It just keeps the lines from marching in.
That's filler or Botox in the lips?
There's filler
Uh-huh.
right there,
On the line.
and then I sometimes the last couple of times I've done the lip flip,
Mhm.
I'm not sure if I'm gonna continue that. It really is hard to drink and sometimes, like, swallow even because you
Oh
can't get your
gosh.
mouth completely closed. So I'm not sure about the lip flip, but
Mhm.
that's Botox. But filler is just, like, right on the edge,
Okay.
like, that little thing right there,
Mhm.
and this fullness is the lip flip, but you can't
Okay.
really tell with
Yeah.
the amount,
It looks
I
very
don't think.
natural.
Yeah, it does again, I think people I could get them all plumped up, but
Mhm.
I get nervous, and I only do that about every 2 years, so,
Okay. Oh, wow. So that lasts a while.
yeah, I
That's
think
good.
fillers are supposed to last for a minute,
Mhm. Yeah.
but anyway.
Well, should we dive into today's big topic?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, great. So today's topic is actually derived from a few listener questions that we had the last time we asked you all for questions. The overwhelming majority were related to the same topic. So it's all about how to navigate hiring an interior designer and how to know if a designer is in your budget, if it's the right move for your project. So a couple of people have sent questions in related to that. There's so much to unpack. So we'll dive in. There's so much to know, I think, about the design process, hiring a designer. And of course, it bears mentioning that most designers work differently. There's a few standard ways, but in all of my many years and conversations with so many different designers, I think everybody has sort of a
Their
different
own way.
method to run their process, to the way that they build, the way that they structure their studio and their team. So we can share our experience. That doesn't mean that it's the end all be all. It's what works for us and sort of what to look for. But a lot of the conversation will be sort of from the perspective of a client finding the right fit. So, at what point, I get this question sometimes from people who are like, I'm not sure if it's the right time yet to engage you, but we have this project, we're going to build this house. So, at what point in the process should a client consider hiring an interior designer?
Well, there's not gonna be really any work to be done until. I mean, when there's something to do, I guess,
Mhm.
is basically, and that is if you're doing ground up, you're going to want your designer from the time that you have your architect
Right.
to, yeah, to start that process. And hopefully the architect and the designer collaborate. The designer is working with the client also to get the feel for how they want their interiors to unfold,
Mhm.
because that's going to inform so many decisions about the way the house is laid out
Right.
and what the details are. So you're going to want your, if you're doing ground up or a gut
A big
renovation,
renovation.
you want your designer from the jump. When you're hiring your architect, you need to hire your designer. You don't want the designer coming in later because there may be things that have to be changed or edited that would have just been part of the organic process, right?
Definitely. And I do think that when it comes to that also, the most impactful and effective way of utilizing that team that you put together between your architect, designer, and builder is to have regular meetings
Meetings.
as a team. Most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, we're involved in all of those meetings. There have been a couple of projects here and there, and it's not the way that I would want to do it, but the client is like, we're going to meet with the architect separately and then we'll fill you in. I think it's because they're wanting to save on the time that they're paying for, perhaps.
Mhm.
But I think it's to the detriment of the project
For sure.
because in those meetings, there's so much that we can discuss and work through in real time. We can
Mhm.
anticipate issues, we can address issues, we can work as a team to resolve any, you
Mhm.
know, gray areas or problems or differences. Most of the time, it's always a very collaborative, wonderful process, and I
Yeah.
think that if you assemble the right team, you're going to have an amazing result. But it's really important to involve all of the people, even though at different stages, early on with a new build, the architect is really going to be driving the process and the conversation.
Yeah.
And it's not really until later that the designer really has a bigger role.
Yeah. For sure.
However, it's so important because we're thinking, as you said, about how those spaces are going to live on the interior. At the beginning, the architect is often thinking about the elevation, the shell. They're thinking about roof lines, pitches, how a window looks on the outside. However, we're thinking about what is that window placement? How am I going to illuminate, this vanity
Yeah.
if there's a window where a mirror would
Yeah.
go and I can only have one sconce, I can only light one side of
That's
this
right.
person's face, all of these things. So it's just you have an extra advocate to help you
Mhm.
think through all of those things because
And
when you're building new or renovating, doing a big gut, like there's so many decisions to be made. So you definitely want to assemble your team
and
early
there
on.
are great architects who can think of everything, and
Mhm.
then there are so many architects are men these days too, and a lot of times I find they're not asking clients questions about, like, where are you gonna put your linens for your
Mhm.
dining room,
Right.
like, or how are you gonna, if you're gonna entertain on your patio, like, are you gonna come through the kitchen and the back door, or should we figure out a way to get to the patio from the living room, or, things like that, like questions that are more, working maybe with the lady of the house that's so arcane, or just not the
Mhm.
lady of the house, but whoever might be the entertainer in the house, if you're going to use your house for entertaining, or little things like that. Like, well, if we have this casing all the way up, there's no place to put a drapery rod or whatever,
Mhm.
So you do need your designer if you want it to be cohesive and kind of all in, if that's the look you're going for. And I assume if you are hiring an architect and a designer, you want everything to be thought of,
Right.
and considered.
Right. And there's so much to consider in those big projects. And I think even if you have more of a straightforward furnishings project, let's say you've moved from a new city or into a new house and
Uh,
the house you're moving into doesn't require a lot of work beyond, maybe changing out some
mhm,
light fixtures or hardware or installing wallpaper, paint, that kind of thing. It's more straightforward. I do think if the scope is large enough, it makes sense to bring in a designer, again, to
mhm,
create a very cohesive look from one space to the next, to consider the way that you live and entertain,
mhm.
the way that your family moves through the home's rooms.
Mhm,
That's always, I think, a great time to bring in a designer, but
mhm,
other times, if somebody's like, "Well, I'm not sure if I need a designer," I think anyone can benefit from a designer
mhm,
if the budget allows. It's always going to be a benefit because you'll have access to more resources and ideas that you may not have thought of on your own, the experience that a designer brings to the table. But, perhaps if you have just like small tweaks or just a single room to work on, or sometimes people are like, they enjoy working on things and putting things together, and they're not an active designer, but they are a design enthusiast, and
mhm.
perhaps they have the bandwidth to
Yeah,
sort of take their time with it and execute it themselves. I think in those cases, you could utilize a service like The Expert if you wanted,
yeah.
a
That's a
designer to sign
great
off on it.
idea.
I offer consultations on The Expert, and there's so many designers on there, and I feel like that's a good way to like invest a little bit and be able to know that
Yeah.
you're on the right track or maybe get some expert advice.
Yeah, or even somebody, a designer in your town
Mhm.
that would be willing to take those types of commissions by the hour. I know there's several people in
Right.
Birmingham that will just run out to your house and give you some advice, and then
Mhm.
you can do with it what you will. You can
Right.
consider it, but make your own decisions. If you're one of those people that has a strong point of view and knows what you want to execute, but you're kind of you've found yourself in a corner, I think the expert is a great way
Yeah.
to resolve those.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, otherwise, I mean, that's not something that we don't
we
offer
don't.
that,
Yeah.
I know you don't
Mm-mm.
either, we're full service. For those who don't understand or don't know, if they haven't worked with a designer before, what does full service mean at your firm?
Yeah. Well, for us, it means we manage everything.
Mhm.
And much as you want us to, not just the furniture, we can and have done all of the bedding and towels and put the stuff in the closets
Mhm.
and turnkey. Not everybody goes that far. You don't have to go that far to
Mhm.
hire a designer. You can certainly buy your own sheets and towels. For sure, that's no issue, but just as far as the breadth of it goes,
Right.
and that also means a lot of times people on the front end have questions about, like, well, if we're buying something from like a big box store or what have you, I usually tell my clients, do you want to, like, let's just say you have a playroom and we're going to order a sleeper sofa
Mhm.
sectional from Pottery Barn. Usually I'll say, do you want to try to buy this on sale or do you want us to manage it? And I think this demonstrates what full service is.
Right.
That means we pick it out, we measure it, we make sure it's gonna fit in the space, manage delivery, like storage, delivery, when it comes in and it's, wrong,
Mhm.
we send it back. We do everything to make sure that it's perfect so you don't have to do it. If you're doing it yourself, like, you need to order it, you need to figure out where you're gonna store it, get it there the day that we're moving in,
Right.
and when they cancel the delivery, or, the guy calls at 6 o'clock in the morning with the truck and says, we're here, where do you want us to leave this sofa?
Mhm.
You're up,
Right.
not
Right.
your designer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's very much the same for us. It's full service from the beginning. That means sort of the discovery period where we're getting to
Sure.
know you, understanding what the project is, refining the scope, determining a budget together, doing all of that work. And then obviously we have a big design phase in which we're designing everything. In our office, we do obviously scaled furniture plans. We also
Yes.
do beautiful watercolor renderings for every room. If the client is more visual and really wants a more photorealistic representation, we can also do 3D renderings. We don't do that quite as often. And then, we do our design presentation, itemized proposal. We then go into the production phase, is what we call it. And that's when all of the ordering and expediting happens.
We call that
There's
procurement.
you call it procurement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Procurement production. There's so much that goes into that people don't always understand. And, let's say we propose a chair. We're going to have a lounge chair made. We have to get a quote from the workroom. We have to get a quote on the fabric, the trim. We
Mhm.
have to work with those 3 vendors to
Mhm.
secure those 3 things. Then we're also sending off for CFAs or cutting for approvals on the
Mhm.
fabric and the trim. Those have to come in. We send in the purchase order. We have to wait for an order acknowledgement to come in. If the CFA is wrong, we have to request a new one. There's a lot of back and forth. It's not as simple as like going on a website, adding something to your cart and checking out. And that's maybe, I think, where people don't realize how much happens
Yeah.
behind the scenes. And then you've got to manage the shipping and the delivery and making sure it arrives to the right place at the right time in the right color. There's so much.
I don't think people will get how much goes into it. Not just the design, because it's not just this is a good chair. It's,
Mhm.
like how many inches it should be deep for
Mhm.
the purpose it's serving, how many
The
inches a
pitch.
seat should be off the floor, what the pitch should be. There's all of that kind of institutional knowledge that goes into the design, but not just that, not just the individual pieces. It's the knitting and the weaving together of the whole house
Mhm.
to and keeping in mind what the client wants
Right.
and bringing to them options that fulfill that desire, right? It's
Mhm.
like it's all of those design elements. And then it's the execution of that, to this end. It's tax season and I had my general ledger printed out and sending to my husband for our taxes and everything because he manages all of that for us, thankfully.
Right.
Anyway, I left it for him last night. I was sitting on the patio kind of decompressing for the day, and he came out and he said, "Can I just say I am overwhelmed with the number of transactions
Mhm.
in your office." He was like, "This is extraordinary." Like, just the pages and pages and pages and
Mhm.
pages, the hundreds of thousands of tiny little transactions that go into and, like, I tell my clients, like, "We do this, so you get to do the fun stuff. You get to come
Exactly.
in and say, 'I really love pink, and I've always
Yeah.
dreamt of having a pink closet.'" You know, great.
Right.
We'll take it from here. We'll, come back
Yeah.
to you and let you tell us what to do, but you can just rest. So it really is for someone who has the budget
Mhm.
to go the distance on that for sure.
It's amazing. It's like having somebody completely unpack you and move you into your house. It's a
Right.
luxury because as the client, if you're able to do full service design, you really get the benefit of having a seasoned team with s- solid processes in place to manage all of that because there is so much, there's so many details, so many transactions, so much to keep up with and all of that we talked about on also has to come in on time and on budget. So it's so much to manage. And I feel like if you can hire a designer, have fun with the creative part, empower them to do the execution and run with it at that point, and then come in for the installation and just see your home transformed. That's amazing. Excuse me.
Yes. Well, right. Exactly. And what should a client look for in a designer?
Well, I think there's a lot to look for. I always say that interview sort of vetting process or there's a potential project on the table, we are really vetting one another because in most cases, our projects take a while to complete. If it's straight furnishings for a house, we might be together for a year. If it's a ground up new
Mhm.
construction or major renovation, we're going to be together a whole lot longer. It might be
Yeah.
2 to 3 years. So
2 to 3.
I think there has to be good synergy between the two parties and you have
Mhm.
to get along and enjoy each other's company.
A client should be looking for a designer whose aesthetic they actually like. Do some
Yes.
research. Come find your designer because you like what they do. Never hire one because somebody said, "She's great, you should use her,"
Yeah.
because then you never know whether to trust their judgment. Look at their work. We can all do that. It's not
Mhm.
like people have portfolio books that would have to have
You
them
don't have to
come
go
to your house
request,
and like
yeah.
spread it out. You can find them on Instagram, look at the work that they've done. If that hits, if you say, "I want to live in a house like that," then those are the people you should interview for sure.
Absolutely. I think that's also that yields the best result when
Yeah.
somebody comes to you because they love
Like
your
you.
work and they've followed your work, they want you. That really that's the way to get the best work out of a designer, because if you're coming to them and you're like, "Oh, well, you were available sooner, or you were less expensive, or
Mhm.
my neighbor recommended you," those are valid concerns, but that shouldn't be the driving factor in who you ultimately choose.
And I tell you when that makes a difference. There's gonna come a time when you don't really know what you wanna do. You're, like, on a something, whatever it is in your house, and you're going to have to decide to hold on to it, white knuckle it, and say, "I'm scared of what this person is proposing, so I'm gonna not listen to them, and I'm gonna do it how I think in my mind it should be done without knowing anything about any of these other things." Or I'm gonna say, "Okay, I don't really understand. I don't see it, but I'm gonna trust you because I know I've looked at all the other stuff that you've done, and you seem to make everything look the way that I like for things to look." So I'm gonna let every project comes to that moment of, do I trust you or do I not trust you? And if I don't trust you, then I'm gonna start making all these decisions myself. And it's almost like if you were making a painting and you were starting to paint a tree and somebody came in and said, "Okay, now I want to do a different tree here."
It's just trust is paramount. That is the biggest factor, and we'll get to what makes, a positive, fruitful client designer relationship, but before we do that, just a few other things that I think are important for people to consider when they're hiring somebody is, while I think it's important to have a clear sense of style and point of view, you want somebody that has a look that you identify with. You also want there to be a range in their
Mhm.
portfolio to a degree.
Sure.
So perhaps you're working on a Manhattan apartment, or you have a beach house and their portfolio only shows, single family homes. You want somebody that's worked in the type of scope and style and application, let's say, that you are needing. You want people that if have worked on similar scope. So if you're doing a ground up new build, you want to find somebody who's experienced doing new builds and taking on projects of that size.
I think that is more important than necessarily having done the particular type
Mm,
of project before. Because I think, like you and me, that would just leave us doing only the things that we had done before. And I
yeah,
welcome
that's
a
true.
new, like when you were talking about an Art Deco project, if they
Hmm.
eliminated you because you had never done Art Deco, well, where's the challenge in that?
Yeah,
Those of us who are worth our salt are willing to
that's so true.
grow and accept broader projects than we've done before. But have you managed one that's the scope? Like,
Correct.
and or are you willing to do what it takes to come up to speed to
Hmm.
learn? I think architects maybe have a harder lift with things like that as far as codes and what have you.
Yeah,
Ours is more limited than that, but
definitely.
definitely managing large scope projects,
Hmm.
you want somebody who has the team and can manage the scope and the
Yeah.
breadth, go the distance. You don't want to get halfway in and have somebody who's decided they're not cut out for the business or
Right.
whatever.
Definitely. I also think it's important to ask about their particular process. What does your
Mhm.
design process look like from the inception of a project through the installation? What am I to expect from that experience? What does that look like for me as the client? I think that's super important, because ultimately, you're not just hiring taste and somebody to make aesthetic decisions for you. You're hiring somebody to manage a process and solve problems as they arise. And if we're honest, even in the best case scenario, there's always going to be an issue, a hiccup. There's always, I mean, when you're dealing with hundreds of items and SKUs, it's inevitable that something is going to arrive incorrect, or it's going to be put on back order, or, damaged in transit. Like there's always an issue to
Mhm.
solve. We always say, it may not be our fault, but it's our issue
Our
and we've got to
problem.
resolve
Yeah,
it for
for
the
sure.
client, and oftentimes you'll find that even if it's not the designer's fault, some of the other people involved, whether it's a shipping company or the receiver, whoever, they may not want to take responsibility for things. And then we're end up we end up having to be the ones that make it right for the client. But we do, because
That's
we
right.
are in charge of that, that overall experience in getting us to the finish line. So
That's
I
right.
think it's super important to understand that they have like what their process is, what that looks like, what deliverables you'll receive, and sort of a timeline for that.
Mhm.
Because it helps to manage expectations.
Yeah,
Then everybody enters the project on the same page. We all understand what's expected of one
sure.
another.
Okay, so what are the I feel like I know that your office charges hourly. Is
We
that
do.
yeah.
Yeah, we're hourly and then a commission or markup, as
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
often called, on goods.
Mhm.
And then other people, do flat fee. We have done some flat fee projects. We have proposed projects both ways in
Mhm.
the past.
Mhm.
And I mean, when you do an itemized budget spreadsheet side by side of hourly plus markup or flat fee, in our experience, it's always shaken out to be about the same.
Mhm.
I happen to
Mhm.
like hourly. Most everybody that I know and talk to, in terms of other designers who have been around for a long time, they charge hourly as well. It's just a very sort of black and white kind of clear way we understand like this is what we're getting for the time.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that it's for everybody. And I'm always questioning if we're doing it the right way and constantly like trying to refine processes and the way that we might present our services. So I know some people do flat fee or a design fee plus hourly for production where it's sort of a hybrid. What do you do in your office?
Yeah. It's a question I'm always asking myself, am I doing this right? One thing we've done recently with success is a monthly flat fee for the length of the project.
Mm,
Does that make any sense? So
yep.
it is an average of the hourly costs monthly so that the client has some expectation of what they're going to
Mhm,
spend each month and for the length of the project, particularly if it's a very long project, because I
mhm.
find that clients get billing fatigue at the back end of a
Right.
project when
Yes,
it's hourly.
that's
And
right.
those are the hours that sometimes are the most crucial to spend.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Right, because 'cause
So,
they're getting us to the finish line.
yes, and this comes from my experience practicing law and billing by the hour as well. Like I can see it coming down the
Mhm.
road and they're wanting to cut it down, and managing expectations is certainly in costs and having a fine point goes a long way. But I think that the client is the winner in those and not the designer
Yeah,
always.
yeah, that's very true. Very,
Yeah.
very
So, but anyway, okay, Paloma, tell us what makes a great client designer relationship before we close out.
I think trust is the most important thing. You have to trust that you've hired the right person. Hopefully you vetted your designer properly. You feel good about, this relationship, this working relationship moving forward, and you're excited about the person you've hired and their team, their process makes sense and works for you. I mean, the greatest gift a client can give me is their full trust. Now,
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that they're going to give me carte blanche. I
No,
don't need or want that, but I need them to trust that I'm showing them the best version of something, to
right,
trust that I'm taking all of the feedback they've given me, their lifestyle, the flow of the house, all of those things into consideration when I'm designing things. I'm not just picking things willy nilly.
right,
Um, and and to trust the process. We have that process in place for a reason. My firm's been around 13 years. We've done hundreds of projects. Like, we understand the sequence in which things need to happen in order
right.
to be the best stewards of the client's timeline and budget and to have the best result. And if we disrupt that or somebody wants to do things differently, it's never for the benefit of the project. Like, I've relented in some ways and just maybe done something differently than I typically would because a client requested it. It never works out any better than sticking to our tried and true process would have. So I would just say trust the
Yeah,
person you've hired. And if
I
it
agree.
doesn't feel like a fit, have that conversation early on.
Yeah,
Because if not, I think you end up in a situation where you're unhappy, you feel like you're spending money on something that isn't what you wanted, and the designer's probably picking up on it and feeling like they just can't get into a groove with the client. So it's
yeah,
always best to be honest, but really for a successful relationship, trust have fun with it. It's an amazing, wonderful thing to be able to do. So, really enjoy the process and communication, like just answering questions, making decisions, I think in a timely manner is really important. If you sit on something for too long, that might be an indication that maybe you need to see another option. I also think it's important to trust yourself as the client to make the decisions and
Mm.
not have to go to like a peanut gallery of people to get a second
Uh,
opinion.
yeah.
Because then that starts to dilute the design, and ultimately, they're not paying for it, and they're not, the ones that are gonna live in the house. Like, it doesn't matter what your neighbor thinks or your best friend from high school. Like, let's focus on the task at hand and
That's
give
always the
the client what
hardest.
they yeah.
Yeah, when you have a client, when you've been working with them, you'll go through this whole process and talk about different things, what they want. You're guiding them. You come to a conclusion of whatever. And then 4 weeks later, they come back and they've talked to their mom and their sister, and they've got
Mhm,
this idea and that idea and this idea. And then we start spinning, it's much better. Now, I've had a mom involved in the process from the jump on the team, and that
mhm.
actually was 100% delightful. I
Oh,
loved it. And she gave great advice. She had been a designer. And I
mhm,
thought when we got started, oh, Lordy, here we go. But it was so great because she could say to her daughter, you see what she's doing here. She is looking at this, that, and the other. And she's got this all, and in a way, and could talk to her daughter in a way that I didn't know that I needed to. You know what I'm
mhm.
saying? So it was
Yeah.
really, if someone is a part of the team, then they should come to the meetings. You know what I'm
Yes,
saying?
whether it's a husband or any other family member
Yeah.
that's gonna be part of the decision making, they need to be present at all of the important meetings, at the presentation,
Yeah.
and you need to be able to be the one as the designer to explain the vision
Yeah.
and the decision and the why so that the onus isn't then on the client to explain it to another person who also has decision making ability.
Yeah.
I think that's super important for
And it can
sure.
be really inefficient to constantly to make decisions and constantly change them and be
Mhm.
circling back and change them. And then everybody kind of loses their sensitivity to what we decided, which is
Totally.
ultimately to your detriment.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Mm,
Well, I think really just trusting one's instincts, trusting their
yeah.
designer, and hiring the person whose style and process fits and feels good to you
Yeah.
is a key takeaway, and if you're trusting and comfortable in that, then you're going to have a great experience.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree.
And as Miles Red says, you buy the best and you only cry once. So it's a big
No
investment not to be
truer
taken lightly.
words have
Yeah.
ever been spoken. For sure.
Yes.
For sure. Okay. Well, I loved being with you.
Likewise. Thanks for
Have a
joining
great week.
us. Bye.
Bye bye. Okay, guys, that's all the time we have for today. But we'd really love to connect with you. Send us your questions, anything from design to fashion to culture and everything in between. Send emails to questions at the Install Podcast or just DM us on social at the Install Podcast, at Paloma Contreras Design, or at Caroline Gidier Design. Each week, we'll select one listener's question and feature it at the end of the episode. And if you like the show, be sure and like, rate, and review us. That really helps us get the show off the ground. This is The Install. We'll see you next week.